Huri Islamoglu is visiting fellow at Gateway House. She has been professor of economic history at Bogazici University, Istanbul, visiting professor of history at UC Berkeley, and she has also taught at Middle East Technical University in Ankara, Central European University in Budapest, and NYU. Geographically, her work addresses Ming and Qing China, Ottoman Empire, Germany, and England in the 19th century. She is also interested in issues of governing the present day global societies and what law is in that context. Huri has a PhD and an MA in economic history from the University of Wisconsin Madison and has worked in the economic history PhD program at University of Chicago. Welcome, Professor.
Thank you.
So, how do you look back on your career today? Did it turn out how you expected it to be? Did you find it fulfilling?
Well, I never set out to have a career. And it didn't, I still don't consider it a career so much as it's something I love to do, and they're paying for me for that. And that has been rather embarrassing. Every time I get a check, I feel, wow, do I deserve this? And that kind of thing. It's because I never look at it as a profession, as a career. I go after the questions that come to me, and it is a pursuit. It has been a pursuit of questions. So I shifted fields a great deal as a result. I started out as an economist. My first degree is in economics. And then, as I was doing my PhD in economics, I realized somewhere along the way that economics is about an abstraction from a moment in European history. The science of economics. That moment was the moment of free tradeism. And it was like taking that instance from history and then building a whole model around it. That's what classical macroeconomics does. So I decided to go into that history rather than dwelling on the model, on the idealized model, which was held up across the world as something to aspire to. I decided to go to the history of where it all began. And then I discovered that the whole package of European social science or American social science. I was in America while all this was happening, of course. I was studying in America. The whole post-World War American social science, including economics. These fields developed in America in the post-war period with the American world domination. It was all about the West. And while the non-West was seen as either a punch bag, which sort of was shaped according to Western interests, or were victimized. So I tried to understand what that non-West was. That's how I got into Ottoman history. I'm not a historian in the traditional sense. I went to Ottoman history to kind of see or explore whether the stagnation thesis, which gets to be perpetuated in Western academia about which got to be at that time, now it's less, I hope, in Western academia about the non-West, that it's stagnant, it's despotic, it's non-innovative, etc. I wanted to explore if that was so historically, and if that was so, why it was so. And that's how I started my work on Ottoman history.
Could you tell us about your books and academic work and how you went about doing the research?
Okay. My first book, my first research agenda, which still gets to be used as a textbook in America, which I'm very nervous about because I am far from it now. It was published when I was 28 or so, and so it is an embarrassment to me, but it's the most quoted word in Ottoman field. Why it was so? It was a departure from the traditional historiography, in the sense that it was within the perspective of what we called at that time world system perspective, which was about these societies were there, and then non-Western societies I talked about, and the Western trade comes and underdevelops them. So underdevelopment is not a feature of these societies, but it was the Western trade which occasioned this, was the thesis. And of course this was counter to the whole social scientific perspective which prevailed in America at the time. This is 1970s. So it was what that perspective called modernization theory told us these societies were stagnant, and the West comes with its trade, etc., to dynamize it. So we were refuting that. We were saying the West came to underdevelop them, to make. That's the beginning. But then I did this. This is responding to your question more effectively. Then I decided this book was very successful. War System was extremely successful. We were part of the milieu of Emanuel Wallerstein, and etc. Everything was fine, but I got very nervous about this. I thought it was a bit too neat, and I began to see we too were assuming a kind of a stagnation in the non-West. All we were saying, okay, the West didn't do good, but its influence was negative. But other than that, we were kind of not questioning the stagnation dimension. So I decided to learn Ottoman, which is like Urdu, a composite language, and especially the financial documents, etc. Reading the financial documents, etc. It's a very specialized kind of a language, so I learned that and went into the Ottoman archives. And I did that work in 2-3 years. It was archival work, hardcore empirical work. And then I began to see the dynamics, internal dynamics of of the Ottoman agriculture. My focus was on agricultural economy. And then I focused on the interaction of rural and urban economies, and what I came up with there, which was very important, it still helps me, that insight. It is like we assume peasant economies and isolated, etc. I found out the peasant economy, so-called, was in no way isolated, because they had to pay taxes in cash, so they had to come to the market in one form or another. And they were involved in markets, in other words. So they weren't cut off from the world as Marx assumed they were in this Asiatic mode of production, conceptualization, etc. So I sort of questioned the stagnationist perspective of agrarian societies. In that relation, I was in contact with Irfan Habib, the Mughal historian of India. I don't know if you're familiar with his work. So that is the sort of hardcore historian in me. But again, what I would like to emphasize here is whatever I did was driven by questions. And those questions always tended to be political questions. I come from a political family. From the very start, when I was very young, etc., I was puzzled because, in our household, whatever happens, like to the Turkish state, we leave it at our breakfast table because my father either goes to jail or, is out of jail or whatever. So everything has sort of one-to-one impact on our family. So for a child, it's not easy to try to assimilate this. And so the so-called academic career was largely motivated by a desire to make sense of the world. What the hell is happening? There must be something deeper to explain all this. And so going into that deeper probably made me an academic.
Okay, so could you share with us your journey as a professor, and as you've already spoken about being an economic historian.
But then of course, economic history is not about the past necessarily. It's about today. It's about today because it's driven by questions we formulate today, by questions we're interested in today. Like when I look at today, and now I do more work on global policy, global economic, political economy, global political economy. That's what has been my work in the past 5 years or 6 years. But it is always related to this historical perspective. History is about process. Yesterday is history. 10 years ago is history. But history means, to me, a process rather than the past. That past, and you have a peculiar interest in the past. I've never been, in that sense, a historian. I'm not an antiquarian. I'm not a chronicler. So it is the questions. It's the questions I look for. As for the journey, see, professorship came very easy. I was a professor very young, so it wasn't a journey. It came by the way. I was writing these books, etc., and it happened. They said, "You're a professor," and I said, "Thank you," and we moved on. And so it wasn't a landmark in my life. That's why I'm sure it's like this in India, like that in India. In Turkey, it's so important people even call themselves a professor. I am Professor XYZ. And so it never came to me like that. And but of course, one thing about being a professor, or about being an academic, I really enjoyed very much as my students. With most of them, from way back now, I have students who are, I'm embarrassed to say that they're in their late 40s and they tell me this, no, you can't be. I mean, that makes me old too. But that's been the joy. And that's the biggest joy.
Okay, so could you share with us some advice that you would like to give students and professionals looking to pursue a career like yours?
Well, I mean, I must say I had a very fulfilling career. A life, I would say, because it's always been my life. It never was separated from my life. But my friendships and people I worked with together were also my comrades, people who had similar political leanings, or people, even if they didn't have similar political leanings, people I could fight with, and so it has been a life. And if I am in a position to give any advice, it would be like put all your heart, soul in whatever you're doing. There's nothing that is below anybody's dignity. It becomes, you dignify it by putting all of yourself in it, whatever it is. So that's what I would say.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
If you have any questions or suggestions, please leave them in the comments section below and follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and SoundCloud.